It's a fantasy. It's a lie. It's false security, and it will end badly, as socialism always ends badly.
Sean Hannity fears for the future of America and the world. He's written his first book in 10 years as a warning, Live Free or Die, America and the World on the Brink. In this episode, we sit down together to discuss. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Sean Hannity, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Jan, thank you. And I was telling you off air, I read the Epoch Times daily. It's nice to have, I still like hard papers, right? So I delivered the Long Island Press Newsday and the New York Daily News when I was growing up at different times. And I still like to grab that paper in my hand, but I get more printed versions of stories than ever before. But you guys have done an amazing job, and really, I think there's such a void in media, especially newspapers. I mean, they slant so solidly one way that there's very few papers that I can really feel that I can rely on, and the Epoch Times is one.
Well, really appreciate those kind words, and we appreciate you also, citing the paper on the show and so forth.
Thank you. Well, you deserve it. I know you're working hard. It's amazing, isn't it, that that the media, in my view, has gotten so corrupt, so abusively biased, so one-sided. How is it possible? I'll give you just a few quick examples if you don't mind, but, how do they claim that they care about obstruction of justice, but they didn't care about Hillary's subpoenaed emails, and didn't care about BleachBit, and didn't care about hammers? And if anybody that watches this American Thought Leaders show or reads the Epoch Times would know that if it was a conservative or it was them, they'd be in big trouble. Try deleting subpoenaed emails. That's not going to work out or end well for you. Or the fact that they care about Russia collusion, but they yet ignored Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for Russian dossier that was then used, unverified, to spy on a presidential candidate and his transition team and deep into the presidency. But they pushed the Russian conspiracy theory that we now know the FBI knew even before the first FISA application in August of 2016 was unverified. They knew for sure that it was debunked in January of 2017 when the subsource of Christopher Steele, in other words, the source that he used, was saying, oh, no, none of this is real. That was all bar talk. But they still drag the country through this. Or they care about quid pro quos with Ukraine, but they didn't care about Joe Biden on tape saying, you're not getting $1 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars unless you fire this particular prosecutor that's investigating my son, who has zero experience. He went on Good Morning America, greatest interview of a 49-year-old man ever. Do you have any experience in oil? Nope. Gas? Nope. Energy? Nope. Ukraine? No, none. Any background that would, entitle you to make millions of dollars to sit on a board? No, not really. Why do you think you got the job? I don't know. Maybe because your father, the vice president, was in charge of Ukraine policy? Then he goes, yeah, probably. That's probably it. But yet they made a big deal about a call with Zelensky and President Trump. There was the one fact witness after all of that they put the country through. Well, there was only one fact witness. Every other witness, hearsay or opinion witness. And what did the fact witness say? Well, yeah, I talked to the president. Did he say he wanted anything from Ukraine? He said, no quid pro quo. I just don't want them to be corrupt. None whatsoever. And when you just stand back and you take these examples in, it is breathtaking hypocrisy. And then the media, that makes such a big deal about, and they say these things are important. Russia collusion is important. Obstruction of justice is important. Can't have Russian interference important. Can't have quid pro quos. They just ignore their side. So they're really propagandist, statist. No better than the former Soviet Union's Pravda. They lie. They smear, they slander, they libel, they besmirch. They're involved in daily character assassination. They have a cultish psychosis and hatred towards all things Donald Trump. And those are the times we're living in. And now we got an election in, 82 days. And we have the most radical ticket in the history of this country that is now openly advancing the very policies that are the antithesis of those policies that made this country great. And that's what I recognized a year ago. I said, this is going to be a tipping point election. We'll lose the country. If their stated policies are implemented, the United States, we will literally, everything gets turned on its head. And as I have in the fourth chapter of the book about socialism, a history of failure, it's never worked. No matter what name it's given, no matter what country it's been tried in, it does not work. It will not work here. It is the promises that everything is going to be free will never be fulfilled. It will lead to poverty, it will lead to misery, and it will lead to a loss of freedoms. That is the end result every time. And so we're going to either live free and stand by the principles of limited government, greater freedom, that our rights come from God, not from government, and freedom and risk and reward and capitalism, or we'll go down the hellhole that is socialism, because that's what's at stake in just 82 days.
You know, you have it. It's a remarkable book that you have, actually, Live Free or Die. And you mentioned it's not just America on the brink in your view, but it's also the world. And I want to ask you about that. But before I do that, you have this amazing stat in here that I didn't even know in the book. And it matches up with what we're talking about right now. But you said 43% of Americans overall say socialism would be a good thing. But the thing that caught me was 51% say it's a bad thing. So that's 49% won't say it's a bad thing. That's astounding. And how did we get here?
And I have another statistic. It's been a while since I did my research about younger people. They have this appeal. Look, Jan, I almost can understand it. It's on paper, right? Okay, we'll put all of our stuff in a big pot and we'll give equal, sort of like to each according to their need, from each according to their ability, right? Varying forms of socialism, communism, redistributionism, statism even. And, okay, this is what they're promising. They're promising that you will get pre-K through college education. They're promising that loan forgiveness for schools. They are promising a guaranteed government job at a guaranteed wage with a guaranteed government vacation, guaranteed government healthy food. They are guaranteed government health care, Medicare for all, or expanding Obamacare, which is a disaster. And then you're going to have guaranteed retirement. Okay, that's a lot of guarantees. And they're predicating it on this belief that we're going to do it, and in 10 years, we're going to abolish the lifeblood of the world's economy, oil, gas, and coal. Okay. Now, that's the dumbest decision I've ever heard. These are lofty ideas, but all of the socialism in that chapter about socialism, all the countries, and I specifically put that chapter on socialism after the Democrats' agenda and what they're offering, are called fantasy land. So they offer all these things. So maybe there's a psychological component. I'll never have to worry about anything ever again for the rest of my life. I will have government insured everything. No more stress, no more pressure. Okay, I actually think there's a healthy stress that makes you dig deep. The word education from the Latin means educere, to bring forth from within, right? Where natural rights from God were endowed by not the thing, Jan, the thing, but God, the creator of everything. People don't get that reference. You're not following the news. And that those natural rights, to bring forth from within says a lot. It means it's already there. And that fits in with our model. Not government rights don't come from government, they come from God. Okay, so every man, woman, and child, I believe, has, God-given gifts. Now, human beings have a propensity towards good and evil, separate argument. But so if we believe that, and the government's going to guarantee all of these wonderful things, and if you have no pressure, you're not going to dig deep and find what your gifts are. You won't have any need. Everything's taken care of anyway. We'll basically make America a bunch of trust fund citizens, and I never have met many trust fund kids that it worked out well for. I know people that have money that don't give their kids as much as they would like, and they say, you got to buy your house, you got to buy your car, you got to pay your rent. And then the kid is like, well, why don't you do it? Because it's your life, and I'm not going to take living away from you. So anyway, the government promises all this. I ask everybody, has government's track record been so far? Because I look at New York City, and I look at Chicago, and I look at Seattle and Portland, LA, and San Francisco. How are they doing on the most fundamental role that government should have in terms of law and order, security, and safety? Okay, if I was a teacher, I'd give them an F. They are failing at a spectacular level. Next most important thing, how are they doing with the education of our kids? Well, the United States of America spends more per capita than any other country in the industrialized world, and we come in like 37th to 40th, depending if it's proficiency in reading or math. There are actually, Jan, 13 public high schools in the city of Baltimore. Now, Baltimore happens to be the third highest per capita spending in the world per student. 13. It's not a quiz. It's not a test question. I ask all of your viewers, what percentage of those kids in those 13 public high schools do you believe are proficient in math? You know, we'll give you a few Jeopardy seconds. Da, 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 da. Okay. Now, the answer is there's not one child. Not one. Not one child in 13 high schools. So I'd give government in these big cities, what all these cities have in common? They've been run by liberal Democrats for decades, right? Okay. How are they doing? How did that Obamacare thing work out? Well, millions lost their doctors. That's not what they promised. Millions lost their plans. And everybody on average across the country is paying about 200% more. We're not saving $2,500 per family per year for better care. And there's almost 40% of the country that has only one Biden-Obamacare exchange option. So those are their promises. I'll add a couple of more things. Last time, Jan, that I checked, Social Security and Medicare, they were going bankrupt. Do you remember that? I don't know when's the last time you checked, but we're headed on a trajectory that we're not going to have enough money to pay for it. By the way, they were supposed to put that money in a lockbox, as they told us. That money's been squandered. It's been spent. They raided it. They spent it. They pretty much, you might even say, well, where I grew up, we would call that steal it, because they made a promise. So now they failed in every major promise they've made, but we're going to believe this new set of promises. And now we're going to bank on them having a 100% track record, because what's going to happen when we're now dependent on energy again, instead of we're now energy independent because of Donald Trump's policies for the first time in 75 years. We're the world's largest producer of energy in over 75 years. Okay, how are we going to pull this off? It is $94 trillion for the new Green Deal. It's $52 trillion for Medicare for all, or an expansion of Obamacare. We cannot afford it. Let me give you the simple math. We only take in $4.5 trillion a year. Over 10 years, okay, we're close to $50 million. Wow. Okay, so that wouldn't even pay for Medicare for all. And that's with no defense spending, zero. None of the other governmental programs are funded, and you still come up, well, about 2/3 of the money short based on the estimates. It's a fantasy. It's a lie. It's false security, and it will end badly, as socialism always ends badly. You know, it starts out with the great promises. We'll take the money from those evil rich people, and we'll redistribute it. That's not what has made America great. America's goodness and greatness is the belief that we're endowed by a creator. We have talents from that creator. We dig deep and find those talents. We create goods and services that people want, need, and desire. And guess what? While we're serving our fellow man, we're also paying our mortgage and buying a car, as those people that create the cars and build the homes are servicing us. And so there's never been a system ever designed by man that is better. If you show me one, I'll look at it. I've not seen it. You know, my friend Barry Farber, one of the great pioneers of talk radio, would always say, there's never been a country in the history of mankind, not perfect, but that has accumulated more power, abused it less than this one. And I add, there's never been a country in the history of mankind that has accumulated more power, abused it less, and used the power to advance the human condition than this country. That is, I know it's not popular, I guess, now to talk about American goodness, American greatness, American exceptionalism, but it's real, and that defines who we are as a people. We are a great, good people, and freedom and liberty and capitalism and risk and reward and innovation and invention has made us great. So, you know, the or die part is we're going to fall for the lie. We're going to believe that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are going to, she won't even give you your own private insurance option. I thought liberals were pro-choice. They both want to get rid of fracking. They both want to, you know, buy into this new Green Deal. Biden's pledging trillions. It is the biggest choice election, Jan, in our life. It's simple. Pretty much every issue, you're either going to believe in much, much higher taxes or lower taxes, more bureaucratic red tape, or wiping it out like Donald Trump has been doing. You're going to want activists on the court. They'll give you that, or Donald Trump will give you constitutionalists, those that revere the Constitution. It's about open borders, amnesty, becoming the United States, sanctuary states of America, versus, well, secure borders. Doesn't mean we're closing off from the world, but we get to vet people that come to this country, make sure that they don't have radical ties, make sure that they're healthy before they enter our family. It comes down to energy independence. That's key. I can't imagine going back to energy dependence. That's a bad idea. That's not good for national security either. So better trade deals, better foreign policy. It's all on the line. The or die part is if we reject, somehow the media is able to convince, and they'll be the largest donors to Biden and Kamala, that reject what has been the greatest, most successful system of governance with the greatest wealth creation in the history of mankind. That's us. That's who we are. Are we going to stay the course, or are we going to go backwards?
So, Sean, you know, I want to get into the world part in your title, because our viewers know that I'm actually Canadian, and that most of them know I'm also an American exceptionalist, because I have had my eye on China for about 2 decades. And when I saw the world on the brink, of course I was thinking of China, but what were you thinking?
Well, China's a big part of it, especially now, what they did to the world. Imagine if they would have, the most sinister part of all that they did here, to me, is they prevented people in Wuhan province from flying out of Wuhan province to any other part of China. They put their own travel ban in effect, and they prevented people from the rest of China to fly into Wuhan. But they let Wuhan province residents travel the globe, and you could come from anywhere, and you could land in Wuhan province. That tells you everything you need to know about how selfish they were. When the world would have united the world's best scientists, researchers, medical professionals, we could have descended upon China to contain this thing, the invisible enemy, the president calls it, immediately had they just sought help. Everybody would have been all hands on deck, and they allowed this to happen. In my view, I hold them accountable. And for the senators, by the way, in this most recent relief package, to try and give them liability protection is insanity. They don't deserve it. And families should be compensated for what they allowed to have happen. They didn't create the virus, but they allowed the spread of the virus. They didn't tell the world the truth. Here's the broader picture, though, what I was thinking about America and the world. You know, my father fought in World War II. We grew up very poor. My mom grew up very poor. My 4 grandparents all came from Ireland, all of them very poor. My mom grew up in the South Bronx, was a prison guard, worked 16-hour shifts almost my whole life growing up. My dad worked as a waiter on the weekend, family court probation during the week. And, you know, but when he was 18 or thereabouts, he signed up. He served 4 years in the Pacific in World War II, didn't particularly like it. But if you look at the last century alone, let's just isolate the last century. Over 100 million human souls, when you add it all up, Mao, the revolution, China, Russia, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, fascism, Tojo, Japan, the killing fields, Cambodia, you know, over 100 million souls killed in these governmental systems. It's the United States of America. We beat back the forces of fascism. We beat back the forces of Nazism and Imperial Japan and communism. And more recently, we lead the world in this fight against radical Islamism. And we pay it with blood, sweat, tears, financial burden. That's all on us. We take it on and we protect the world. So goes America, Jan, so goes the world. And we need a strong America. And we need a mighty military to deal with the real evil, the real danger that exists in the world. And to deny that reality or that fact is beyond naive. I mean, it's amazing because there's never been a president that has been a closer ally friend to Israel. More recently, we saw the president's actions. You're speaking of China with Hong Kong. I think that what was inconceivable 5 years ago is now happening. You see this alliance that has emerged with Jordan and Egypt and Israel and the United States and the Saudis and the Emirates. I mean, this is all historic stuff, but the alignment really comes against Iranian hegemony in the region. They are a real clear, China and Iran and Russia be the three real clear present dangers to the world, I believe, that we've got to keep our eye on the most. And for all of these countries that would never get along to unite as they have in ways that I know that many other people don't know, has been an amazing, it's amazing progress for the good that I hope we build upon. If Iran ever gets a nuclear weapon, they will use it. That's my prediction. That can't happen.
Yeah, so to your point, today as we're speaking, this normalization of the relations between Israel and the UAE, I mean, remarkable. I think everyone would agree, not necessarily something everyone was expecting. And secondly, we also have these, I think the first biting sanctions against China, against these human rights abuses in Xinjiang and, what the Hong Kong is doing essentially at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. We haven't seen anything like this before.
It's interesting because President Trump ran as somebody who doesn't want to get involved in foreign entanglements. First of all, energy independence from a geopolitical strategic vantage point. The Straits of Hormuz, as much as we don't like the Iranians, you got 40 miles, 44 miles, you got to sneak through the narrow straits, and a third of the world's oil supply passes through there. And you see what the Iranians from time to time, they do the little saber rattling. We don't have to worry about the Straits of Hormuz anymore because we're energy independent. Now, doesn't mean we're going to let them get away with it if they are stopping the free flow of oil at market prices, but the fact that we don't have to get involved gives us an ability, a flexibility that we otherwise didn't have. As far as China goes, I think China will only respond to strength. I think they have contempt for American weakness. And to be honest, I don't think Joe Biden is physically, I see him, he looks frail. He looks weak to me. One flub after another, it kind of seems out of it. I think this is a real question that the country better ask itself. Who is Kamala Harris? I've been exposing, now that we know she's the VP. I just don't think that Joe has the strength, the stamina, the mental alertness and acuity to take on the hardest job in the world at a time where it matters, especially on the world stage.
Sean Hannity, any final words before we finish up?
Yes, thank you. Love the Epic Times, and if I can come back anytime, please have me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Such a pleasure to have you on.